But if you could choose one thing for women who need either executive coaching or ADHD coaching, what would that be?
One thing, self-awareness leads to self-empowerment.
Okay.
The more we
Well,
know ourselves, the more we better understand ourselves, the easier it is for us to advocate for ourselves. That to me is true power.
hey, I'm Hillary Baggett, host of Hill Talks Momentum in Midlife. As an occupational therapist turned entrepreneur after 50, I am on a mission to connect, motivate, and inspire women over 40 to know that no matter what is going on in your body, mind, spirit, or business, you can reach for that dream and know you are not alone as we create the Women's Midlife Network. Well, we're continuing our series of women supporting women, and I have a treat for you today. Today, you're going to get to meet health executive with more than 15 years leadership experience. She's also an executive coach, an ADHD coach, and founder of Muslim ADHDers and Interfaith ADHDers. Farah Jamil is just an inspiration to me. And I love having conversations with people who are different from me. They look differently, they believe differently, but in the end, we are human and our hearts are here to support other women. Enjoy this conversation. So glad you're here, Farah.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we know that October is ADHD Awareness Month. And in case people don't know, that ADHD is now what is the accepted term for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, even though I don't particularly care for it as a deficit because we have so many superpowers. But I'm so thrilled that you are willing to shine light on this diagnosis for many women.
Happy to help. Thank you.
So you wear so many hats. You're an executive coach and you're an ADHD coach. Why is it so important to you to support specifically women in these areas?
It's because for me, I was also diagnosed as an adult. And that's not too uncommon because girls and women tend to be missed in being diagnosed or underdiagnosed. So I thought it was really important to help bring awareness about ADHD. There's still that stigma when it comes to anything that's dealing with mental health. And when I was first diagnosed, I honestly didn't see anyone who looked like me talking about it. And even though I've seen some improvements in awareness and what I like to call demystifying and destigmatizing about ADHD, there's still a lot more work to do. So, as someone, a woman myself, a woman of color, a visible religious minority who also happens to have ADHD, I wanted to add my voice and to be able to talk about this with real evidence-based information and to also look at real life experiences because storytelling is so powerful. So I was hoping that maybe my story can help others.
Absolutely. I think especially when the word deficit is in the diagnosis, the stigma is there, and even the mean girl in our own heads, a lot of the times can say, see, there you go, here's your deficits, when the reality is that there are really incredible strengths and giftings in people with neurodiversity, meaning there are things that we can see and hear. And I think a lot of my listeners know I was also diagnosed at age 50 with ADHD. And the mistake I had made was that I just got the diagnosis and thought medication will help that. But there's so much more that women should know. If someone doesn't know if they have ADHD and they're struggling, what would you say are maybe some of the most common missed signs for women?
Oh, great question. So I like to use the acronym FAST Minds, which was it's actually a book written by two psychiatrists, an American psychiatrist and a Canadian psychiatrist. One of them is Doctor, I think it's Doctors Sermon and Bilkey. And the acronym FAST Minds is what really helped me to think about, oh, I think this might be me. So let's start with FAST. F is forgetful. Now, sometimes, people will forget things once in a while, but when I'm giving this acronym, these are things, and it doesn't have to be all of them, but even if like a few of these are something that impacts you on the daily, like on the daily basis, or is really detrimental to your life, whether it's your home life, work life, social life, etc., then this is something to definitely speak to a clinician about so that you can see, is this something that could be a factor? So F is forgetful. That working memory, you remember something and then suddenly it's gone. Now it can happen to the best of us, but if it's something that's impacting you all the time. A is achieving below potential. You feel like you're not quite where you think you should be. S is stuck in a rut. You're trying to move forward, but you're just feeling stuck a lot. Can't seem to really move forward. T is time challenged. Does it always feel like time is your enemy? And you think that you've got enough time, and then somehow it gets away from you. Also known as time blindness for some of us. So that's fast. Now let's look at minds. M is motivationally challenged. So you may really want to do something, yet you find it so difficult to get motivated, to like get going, to get those tasks started. I is, let me see. I is, oh, I always forget. Impulsive. There we go. I is impulsive. So, are you an impulsive shopper? Do you make impulsive decisions without really thinking it through? It may sound like a great idea at the time, but are you like impulsively doing things that end up being detrimental? N is novelty seeking. So meaning you get bored easily. So you're always searching for that new thing. For me, I say that I've got, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 tabs open on my computer at any time because I get bored. I'm like, okay, I'll start working on this. And this is boring now. Let me go start working on this now because I'm always seeking that new thing. Not the best strategy, perhaps, but, I'm working on that. D is distractible. Like, do you get easily distracted? Ooh, squirrel, shiny object. And S is scattered. Do you feel like your mind is scattered, or like, your surroundings are scattered? Do you have like that perpetually messy car or messy desk or messy rooms? Now, here's the thing. Some say, hey, if you have a messy desk, that may indicate that you're super intelligent. And sure, that's totally fine. But you can still feel scattered. You can still feel discombobulated. So that's the acronym that I've used for myself and for many of my clients, just to say, hey, do any of these resonate with you? And that all comes from that book, Fast Minds.
Oh my goodness. I remember the first time you told me about fast minds, and I thought, oh, that describes me to a T. And I already had the diagnosis, but I was not implementing strategies in order to move forward. And I will say that people will tell me, you can't have ADHD, Hillary. You got, high grades in school. And I said, but you don't know how hard I had to work to overcome all of my challenges of showing up. And I thought, wow, I can't even imagine what it would be like if I didn't have some of those challenges holding me back. I think the impulsivity was something I wanted to highlight because sometimes people see it as a physical impulsive. But I will also say in conversations with people, we, and by we, I mean me, some of us with ADHD will interrupt conversations, or you can't not jump in with what you want to say in response. And I think learning self compassion is such a huge part of this. So I want anyone listening, if you do struggle with organization, keeping a neat car or office or desk, there are resources out there and people that can help. So I'm really grateful that you're able to make it clear for what ADHD looks like for people. That is great.
And it's something that I've been also trying to do with myself. I love how you said having that self compassion. It is really easy for us to listen to that inner critic, gremlin, ghoul, whatever you want to call it, because that mean girl, telling us you're such a failure. How can you not have figured this out by now? Why are you doing that? That's just so bad or so wrong. And when I found out about my ADHD, it was a relief on one hand. I'm like, oh, okay, finally there's an explanation. It's not an excuse. It's an explanation. We've got that biological evidence. Our brains do not have as much norepinephrine and dopamine, which are needed for focus and attention. So now it's like, aha, I know now what's happening. But as you said, for some, medications may work and medications may not work. So what else can we do? It's all about finding the right structure and support for your ADHD brain. Because when you've met one person with ADHD, you've met one person with ADHD. We all present differently. So so even if you have an ADHD buddy or an ADHD family member, okay, you can bond over that for sure, but you may be so different. And the things that you need to support your brain may be different. Just like if we're thinking about working out, so if you and your friend both have the same goals when it comes to working out, maybe you both want to be healthier and stronger, which is great. But for you, cardio is something that works better for your body type. And maybe for your friend, weightlifting is better for their body type, or maybe a combination of it, but in different ways. So you may have similar goals. So both of us having ADHD, maybe we're both struggling with procrastination and we can bond over that, which we have. But we also
Definitely.
know that our brains are different and we present differently. So it's important, I would say, for each and every one of us to take that time to discover who we are and what works for us. And just as importantly, what doesn't work for us. And to not beat ourselves up when we think something should work and it doesn't. This is all part of that self-awareness leading to self-empowerment.
Oh, that is so important. And I think we as women can be hard on ourselves anyway. We can really talk so negatively to ourselves that we don't even realize it. And that self compassion that can only come out of that self awareness of you are not choosing this. The brain is not getting the connections that it needs. And I love that anyone listening could feel encouraged. And obviously, I do a lot of women supporting women, but men can struggle with attention issues. Men can have executive dysfunction. And so I'm not trying to other men out of the conversation, but I just want to highlight and focus on how we help women because I think a lot of women carry shame of not being enough, smart enough, strong enough, focused enough, successful enough, present enough. I mean, it's like we can't win.
Yeah. And here's the thing, ADHD does not discriminate.
Mm.
It does not discriminate. And the way for each of us, regardless of who we are, where we come from, our socioeconomic status, doesn't matter, whatever our backgrounds may be. What's important is that, like you said, we have that self compassion, we educate ourselves, and we really don't hesitate to ask for help. For me, that was one of the biggest things that I had to do, is that I had to ask for support and help. I had to go to my general practitioner and ask, okay, what do we do? Where do we go from here? Can we try some medications and see what happens? Haven't found one yet that works for me. That's just me. And then I also had to realize that I can't do everything on my own as much as I want to, as much as independent as I want to be. And that's great. I love my independence, but it's okay. There's no shame in asking, I need some help in this area. Can you lend me a hand? Because I know, here's the thing, especially as women, and I can only say this from lived experience and from anecdotally seeing other women in my life, we are fantastic at offering help and helping others. We go out of our way to help others. Yet when we need help, we feel that guilt. It's like, oh, I don't want to bother them. Or what are they going to think of me if they see my messy room? They're going to like think lower of me. Would we think less of someone? No, of course not. We are like, yes, how can I help? So,
Absolutely.
right?
Well, I was just going to interject that I work with people who are in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s for my day job as an occupational therapist. And it's exactly the truth. When I work with women, they say, I just love taking care of other people and helping and supporting. And whether it's a spouse or a child or a sibling or a grandchild. And I thought, well, what would they say if you asked for help? And they were like, oh, they'd probably be thrilled to help me and support me. So, women out there, let's just ask for help and receive that help for sure.
What a great reminder, Hillary. Thank you. And here's the other thing that I would add to that. If you ask for help from someone and they say no, it's okay. That just means you have to find the right person. Maybe that person was not able to help you at that time for whatever reason. Maybe that's just not in their wheelhouse. That's okay. Don't allow that. Don't see that as a rejection. Don't see that as, oh, see, I tried it. It didn't work. I'm never going to ask again. Keep trying. That's resilience. That resilience is needed. Don't give up. Don't give up on you, because you deserve the best.
You do deserve the best, ladies. Let's listen to that. You mentioned the word rejection, and it was just this year that I learned the phrase and the diagnosis rejection sensitivity dysphoria. And it's really, for some of us, which it got added to my diagnosis, it's kind of a fear of asking for something, for that fear of rejection is how I experience it, or assuming and interpreting that how someone says something is a negative about me. That's how I experience it. So, in order to counteract that, I would say to someone, hey, I'm practicing asking, and I just want you to know it's okay if you say no, but I'm trying to get over this fear of asking because I don't know what your answer is. And I want you to know that I'm okay either way. And the looks I get are pretty funny, but they're like, I'm going to say no. I'm like, okay, good. And I didn't feel bad and down about it. I was like, I prepared myself, because if someone says no, it might just be a healthy boundary on their part. And I just move on to the next person, right?
Yes, RSD is such a big thing. I'm glad you raised that, because it's something that I've seen many of my clients, men and women, struggle with, that rejection sensitivity dysphoria. And what that really means is that for some of us, we feel more deeply. And, when we get something that is negative, or we hear that no without, and as you did so beautifully, like where you're preparing yourself and you're allowing, that bit of vulnerability to say it's okay if you say no, because you're saying that to yourself too. When you're saying that to someone else, I hear you saying that to yourself. And that is a great way to empower yourself, because here you are working with a structure and support that works with your brain. And it's a way to really help with communication. I know that with many of my ADHD clients, that communication can be tough because and I say this to everyone, no one's a mind reader. So you communicated that so beautifully. I'm going to ask you something. It's okay if you say no, but I'm trying to practice, you know, asking. Amazing. That is amazing, Hillary.
Well, I love how deeply you reach into the hearts to make a safe space for people that you work with. And I do feel deeply. And I used to take that as a negative because people would say to me, you're just so sensitive. I'm like, well, you're just sensitive. Wow, you are sensitive. So it depends on how you interpret that. And when we look at ourselves of just how we are, yep, this is how I was made. And there are challenges with it and there are giftings with it. And it's how we interpret it, right?
Yes, I totally agree. That interpretation and really moving away from building that narrative in our head that may or may not be based on facts. To be honest with you, whenever I've worked with clients and they're building that narrative, I say to them right away, how much of that is fact? And they're like, what do you mean? I say, let's focus on the facts because you're building this story in your head about a situation. And this is with my executive clients and my ADHD clients. I'm hearing you talking about this from that narrative. What's based on the facts?
Yeah.
And they'll think about it and they're like, well, okay, this part here, but everything else, not sure. And then I ask, how can you find out? How can you find out what's true? And typically they say, well, I guess I could ask the person. It's like, because it's very easy to build a narrative and think that we know what someone's going to think or say. But here's the thing, would we want anyone to make that supposition about us? I would say, no, please ask me. If you're in doubt about something, ask. Prepare yourself, if you need to, right? Because that inner critic is going to be trying to keep you down. But when we communicate and when we ask, that's how we bring ourselves up. And we bring everybody else up alongside us too. Because now we're not just spinning tales based on we don't know what, we're focusing on the facts.
Focusing on the facts and truth. And in today's world, there's so much information coming at us. We often don't even know what is being reported, if that's necessarily true. So I know for me, I will invent stories in my head, and I have to work diligently to slow down and say, wait, just ask. Let that person answer. Don't try to guess what they're going to answer, right?
Yeah, because it can be a real disservice to them. And we don't mean to do that. But think of it, if we're starting to spin tales in our heads, we're building this narrative and it may not be making them look very good. We're doing them a real disservice and we're doing ourselves a disservice too. So if we're looking for that self-awareness, leading to that self-empowerment, empower yourselves by asking and confirming. And maybe what you thought was true, perhaps, but then now you know that it's based on fact, not supposition.
Good. I like it. Not making assumptions about how other people are thinking or feeling or what they're willing to do, right?
Yes, exactly.
So helpful. Well, I just wanted to kind of wrap up with you've talked a lot about self awareness. You've talked a lot about, really asking the questions and getting the facts. You've talked about some of the fast minds of the acronym. And are there some key takeaways that you would like to kind of wrap up our session today with?
Oh, okay. Great question. So, key takeaways. If you suspect that you have ADHD, find out. And you don't have to be defined by a diagnosis. This is all about you better understanding yourself and what works for you, what doesn't. So you don't have to necessarily have an official diagnosis, but the more you know about yourself, the more you can empower yourself. Because I know this is something that can be very tricky. You have listeners from around the world, and there's different cultural aspects, there are different rules in different countries. So really look into researching what are the advantages and disadvantages of getting an official diagnosis, and focus on, though, what will help you better understand yourself. That's one takeaway that I would say. Another takeaway is that as you better understand what works for you and what doesn't, that's how you can find the right structures and support for your amazing brain. So, like you said, people would say, you get great grades. How do you do that? But they don't know what it took for you to do that. You probably found some workarounds. You probably found some interesting ways to be able to do it, still shining and showing your talents. But the image that I give is like, it's like having a swan on a lake. It looks calm and serene, and it's like, oh, how beautiful. And then underneath the water surface, their feet are going like this, so fast to be able to like stay afloat. But we don't see that. We just see the top part. And that's okay. We're all going to have different ways of finding things that work for us. So take that time to find what works for you. Take that step back and think, okay, what am I really good at? What are things that I find easy for me, and leverage that? And for things that you find challenging, who or what can support you to help you through those challenges? And I think
Well,
sorry,
oh,
go ahead.
well, I was just going to interject on the supports that I ended up subscribing to ADT Attitude magazine. And then I joined the Attention Deficit Disorders Association membership because there's some amazing resources out there. And I think that support network, because sometimes you can just look on social media for resources, but sometimes it's overwhelming, which is one of our ADHD challenges of overwhelm. And then we kind of shut down. So identifying that barrier and knowing that there are some associations that are truly built to help and support you. What were you going to finish up with your number 3, Fada?
No, that's fine. I would add another resource there, chad.org. So CHAD is Children and Adults with ADHD. So that's CHADD.org. There's also some great resources. A word of caution. For many of us ADHDers, we love information, we'll go down rabbit holes. Just take things one step at a time. So if you go to Attitude Magazine, like Hillary said, and if you go to ADDA, these are amazing organizations. And if you go to CHAD, great. You've got some resources. Take things one at a time. You know, if you're looking at things from a parent perspective, there's parent resources. If you're looking at things from a workplace perspective, then look at those. Take that time, but make sure you're not overwhelming yourself, because it can get overwhelming.
Absolutely.
Yes. And that leads me to my third takeaway is, and actually I'm stealing it from you, that self-compassion. Here's the thing. Whether you're neurotypical or neurodiverse or neurodivergent, everyone's brains are going to be different. It's just like with our eyes. And I learned this concept from Lori Dupar from the International ADHD Coach Training Center, known as the IX Center. And we all have eyes, right? But we may all have different like numbers. Not everyone has 20/20 vision, but when you look at someone's eyes, you can't tell unless you're an optometrist or an ophthalmologist. So people find ways to support their eyes, whether it's with glasses or contact lenses or laser eye surgery. So people take that time to do that, and we typically don't judge people for that. It's the same thing with our brain. So find the number that works for your brain so that you can see clearly, you can be on the same level playing field, or like, above and beyond. But there's no shame in finding out what works for your brain, that self-compassion, that taking that step back. is so important. Just as most of us would be so willing to help others, please make sure you're doing everything you can to help yourself because the world needs you.
Oh, the world needs you, everyone listening. And Farah Jamil, the world needs you. I'm so grateful for your time today, for your wisdom. Oh my goodness, more self-compassion, asking for help, getting those supports, whether it's just starting small, if it's getting one magazine, if it's checking out one support group, if it's like we practice sometimes body doubling and kind of it's co-working and you're not talking to each other, even though we do talk a lot, but you're making progress and you're holding each other accountable in a supportive way, not in a taskmaster way.
Yes.
What a gift you are. Thank you so much. Until next time.
Thank you so much, Hillary. You are truly a gift for all of us as well. Take care.
So, Farah, if people want to reach out with you, connect with you, ask you questions, how can they find you?
Sure. So I have a website with my name, farahjamil.com. So that's F as in flower, ARAHJAMIL.com. And you'll see my executive coaching tab and my ADHD coaching tab. And under the ADHD coaching tab, I've got a free ADHD checklist that people can use to see if maybe they have ADHD. It's not a diagnostic tool per se, but it's something that you can take to your clinician to have that discussion if you think this could be a factor. And it's for adults and kids. So you have it on one page. It's based on the DSM-5 manual, the diagnostic and statistical, I can never say that word, diagnostic and statistical manual of mental disorders that's used by clinicians. And on my executive ADHD tab, you can also download a free leadership checklist if you're looking to see if there's certain leadership skills that you'd like to improve. So people can reach me that way. And you can also get a free 30-minute consultation with me. So you'll see a button at the top. Feel free to click on that and we can chat.
Fantastic. I am so grateful for that. I love that you are also a founder of Muslim ADHDers, so that people who feel like they don't fit in and someone who chooses to cover as part of their faith practice and humility, that they can also work with people. So there's so much I love about you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And you can find me on Instagram at Muslim ADHDers. And I'm also the founder of Interfaith ADHDers, so that you can find me on Instagram with that handle as well.
All right, here's where I need your help. I want you to help me let women entrepreneurs and business owners who are over 50 know that there is a place where they can come to connect, learn, and get inspired at the Women's Midlife Network. You can share this episode with them today. Whether you're clicking those 3 dots to share the episode or following that little box with the arrow up. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for listening. If you've made it this far, I appreciate you being an essential part of the Women's Midlife Network. We're connecting women. We're sharing stories and inspiring change. And not just for now, but for decades to come. I am so thankful for you, and I always hope you feel the love. Until next time, this is Hillary Baggett with Hill Talks Podcast. Let's move forward in midlife.